The night has settled without announcement. It presses down not with violence, but with weight. Beyond the settlement, the snow lies unbroken, its surface hardened by days of still air and deeper cold. The sky is vast and emptied of color, stars faint behind a thin veil that drifts almost unseen. Frost grips the ground and the long, low roofs alike, sealing wood and earth in a pale restraint. Nothing moves across the fields. Even the distant tree line stands in patient silence, branches stiff with ice. The cold is no longer sharp, it has become steady, a presence that endures rather than strikes. It settles into timber, into thatch, into the narrow spaces between planks. It dulls sound. It slows what little life remains outside. Footprints from the afternoon have already stiffened into shallow casts, their edges smoothed by frost. The world seems held in suspension, as if waiting for something too small to name. Within the settlement, the Longhouse absorbs the night differently. Its walls keep back the wind, yet the cold lingers in the beams. A thin line of smoke escaped earlier through the roof vent and has long since vanished into the dark. Now only the faintest red glow rests at the center of the hearth, low and controlled. The air carries the scent of ash and wool and wood that has been warmed many times before. He lies among the others along the wall, wrapped in layers that have taken on the shape of his body over the winter. The wool beneath his cheek is coarse, familiar. His hands rest close to his chest, fingers loosely curled. The cold does not bite here, but it is not absent. It lingers at the edges of the room, held back by habit and shared warmth rather than flame. The Longhouse does not sleep all at once. It settles gradually, as if lowering itself into deeper stillness. Someone shifts near the far end, straw faintly rustling beneath bedding. A quiet breath turns heavier, then steadier. Timber responds with a soft contraction as frost tightens its grip outside. The sound is slight, yet clear in the hush. He opens his eyes for a moment, not from alarm but from awareness. The darkness inside is layered, thicker near the roof beams, softer where embers cast a faint, uneven glow. Shadows move almost imperceptibly along the walls, stirred by the last small currents of warmth rising from the hearth. He listens without lifting his head. There is no wind pressing at the door tonight, no snow falling against the outer boards. The silence is complete enough to feel solid. It rests across the room like an unseen covering shared by every sleeping body. Breath follows breath in no single rhythm, yet together they create a quiet pattern that fills the space. He closes his eyes again. Sleep approaches slowly, not as a sudden surrender but as a narrowing of thought. Images from the day drift through his mind without shape or urgency. The pale light over the fields, the stiffness in his hands as he worked, the muted sky that never fully brightened. These fragments fade, replaced by a heavier stillness. The embers sink lower, their glow shrinks inward, contained and steady. Darkness claims more of the room, leaving only small outlines, a shoulder beneath a blanket, the curve of a bent knee, the faint glint of an oil lamp set near the wall. The lamp's flame trembles once and steadies, its light reaching only a short distance before surrendering to shadow. In this enclosure of timber and earth, the night is no longer something distant beyond the door. It has entered and settled among them. It moves through the space between breaths and rests lightly against closed eyelids. Thought loosens. The boundary between waking and sleep grows thin. He drifts nearer to that threshold, neither fully aware nor fully gone. Around him the Longhouse holds its quiet order. The cold waits outside. Inside, warmth persists in careful measure. One by one, the last small movements subside, and the room yields itself to the deepening hours, where breathing continues in low cadence and the darkness gathers without haste. Sleep settles unevenly across the longhouse. It does not fall like a curtain, it gathers in pockets. Along the wall, one man's breathing deepens while another still lies wakeful beside him, eyes closed but listening to the faint stir of cloth and straw. The air between them holds the warmth of bodies that have worked through short daylight hours, now released into stillness. He remains aware of the closeness, the weight of another shoulder only an arm's length away, the faint warmth that seeps through layered wool. Beneath his cheek, the fabric has grown smooth from repeated use. A seam presses lightly against his skin. He shifts his jaw once, slowly, and the straw below responds with a muted sigh. Further down the wall, a child exhales in a soft, uneven rhythm before turning inward toward the mother's side. The movement is small, careful even in sleep. A hand follows, resting over the child's back without waking. The gesture is instinctive, unspoken, and then the room settles again. The oil lamp near the post burns with a restrained glow. Its light does not stretch far, it rests close to its own source, touching only the nearest surfaces, a wooden beam worn smooth by hands, the rim of a carved chest, the edge of a folded cloak. Beyond that small circle, forms dissolve into shadow, known more by memory than sight. He opens his eyes briefly once more, not to look outward, but to adjust inward. The darkness inside the room is thicker than the one outside, not because it is deeper, but because it is shared. It presses gently against closed lids. It fills the spaces between bodies. It hums with quiet presence. A slow breath leaves him. It warms the air close to his mouth before fading. He turns onto his other side with deliberate care, mindful of the narrowness of the space. The movement is practiced. His elbow tucks inward, his knees draw slightly closer. The bedding yields and reforms around him, familiar as the shape of his own hand. Across the room, a man coughs once, a dry, contained sound, then clears his throat and lies still again. No one stirs in response. The sound is absorbed by timber and wool, diminished almost at once. Silence resumes without interruption. Sleep approaches him in waves, not yet deep but steady. Thought narrows, then loosens. Images from the day drift faintly, not as memories fully formed, but as textures. The feel of rope against his palm, the faint scrape of blade against wood, the dull light of afternoon that never fully brightened. These impressions do not linger, they fade before becoming clear. He senses the longhouse as a single body, many breaths moving within one frame of timber and earth. The closeness does not confine, it anchors. The presence of others forms a boundary against the unknown dark beyond the walls. Within this enclosure, the night is held in measured balance. Another small shift ripples through the bedding nearby. Someone draws a cloak higher, fabric whispering against fabric. A heel presses into straw, then stills. Each movement is restrained, shaped by the knowledge of shared space. Even in sleep, there is awareness of proximity. The embers at the hearth give off a low, steady warmth. Their light is too faint to command attention, yet enough to mark the center of the room with a dim pulse. It rises and falls subtly as ash settles inward. He does not look toward it. He feels its presence in the steadiness of the air. His breathing lengthens. The space between each inhale grows wider. Fingers that had remained lightly curled begin to loosen. The weight of his limbs deepens against the bedding. The room continues in quiet order, unbroken. Sleep claims him gradually, not as absence but as a thinning of edges. Sounds recede first, the faint rasp of another's breath, the tiny crackle from the hearth, the distant contraction of wood. Then sensation softens, the press of fabric, the coolness at his temple, the warmth at his back. Thought drifts without shape. The Longhouse holds its rhythm. One by one, the last small wakeful traces fade. The lamp flame steadies in its small bowl, guarded from draught. Its glow remains modest, unwilling to challenge the dark, and within that restrained light, the room breathes on. Dream comes without announcement. It begins not with image, but with a sensation, the sense of movement where none exists. He walks across a field that feels familiar beneath his feet, though no frost clings to the grass and no weight of winter presses against his shoulders. The air in the dream is neither warm nor cold, it carries no scent. Figures move at the edge of his sight. They do not approach, yet they do not depart. Their shapes are known to him without effort. A face turns, not sharply, not in surprise, but as if acknowledging his presence in a place already shared. He does not speak, there is no need. The field shifts. What had been open ground narrows into a path between low mounds. He recognizes the curve of earth, the outline of stone. Memory threads through the dream without resistance. A raven crosses overhead, silent in its passage. Its wings do not stir the air. He feels neither fear nor comfort, only attention. The images do not demand response. They unfold with a quiet patience. A broken branch lies across the path. He steps over it. The movement is slow, deliberate, and yet without effort. In the Longhouse, his body remains still. Only a slight tightening at the brow suggests inward movement. His breath changes almost imperceptibly, growing shallower then steady again. Beside him, another sleeper turns onto his back, unaware of the dream unfolding so near. The figures in the field pause near a mound of stone. One kneels, brushing snow that is not truly there from its surface. The gesture is careful, reverent. He watches without stepping closer. The air holds a muted expectancy. A face emerges from the gathered shapes, older than he remembers, yet unmistakable. Not vivid, not sharp, but clear enough to recognize. The expression carries neither command nor warning. It is simply present. The eyes meet his for a brief span, then lower. The dream shifts again. The field dissolves into a shoreline. Dark water lies flat, unbroken by wind. A boat rests at the edge, half drawn onto sand. Its hull bears marks of use, shallow grooves, worn edges. He runs his hand along its side, feeling the grain beneath his palm. The wood is smooth and solid. No voice speaks, no sign is offered openly. Yet the images linger with weight. He stands between shore and water, between land and crossing. The raven returns, alighting on the prow. It tilts its head, then lifts again into the dim sky. In the Longhouse, a faint crease forms at the corner of his eye. His hand twitches once against the bedding, fingers pressing lightly into wool. A breath catches, then resumes its rhythm. Around him, the shared silence continues undisturbed. The shoreline fades. Darkness gathers not as threat, but as completion. The figures recede without turning away. The field, the mound, the boat all sink into a soft obscurity. What remains is a sensation of having stood somewhere known, somewhere close to memory yet not bound by it. He lingers at that threshold for a moment longer. The dream does not end abruptly, it thins. Images blur at their edges. The ground beneath his feet loses firmness. The sense of presence softens. Within the longhouse, the embers contract further, their glow dimmed to a faint core. The lamp's flame wavers once as oil settles in its shallow bowl. A quiet murmur escapes from someone at the far end of the room, a word without shape, then silence returns. His breathing deepens again, steadier now. The tension at his brow eases. The dream withdraws without leaving a clear trace, only a subtle residue that rests beneath sleep. It does not vanish entirely. It waits as the night itself waits, suspended between what is seen and what will be remembered when morning comes. A shoulder shifts somewhere to his left, the movement slow and heavy with sleep. Straw compresses, then settles again beneath the layered bedding. The sound is small, contained within the room, yet distinct in the quiet. It does not disturb the whole. It passes through like a ripple across still water. His own body responds with a gradual adjustment. One knee draws slightly upward, easing a stiffness that has formed unnoticed. The wool around his legs tightens, then loosens as he finds a more comfortable position. The fabric holds the faint warmth gathered over hours, releasing it back in slow measure. The lamp near the post burns lower now. Its flame shortens, thickening at the base before rising in a narrow tongue. Light touches the nearest beam, revealing shallow cuts in the wood where tools once marked it. The grain catches and releases the glow, uneven, textured. Beyond that narrow reach, darkness remains complete. Someone nearer the hearth exhales sharply, then breath returns to a slower cadence. A hand slips from beneath a blanket and rests against the packed earth floor, fingers brushing the cool surface before retreating. The earth holds a steadiness of its own, neither warm nor biting, simply present. He does not wake fully, yet something within him rises closer to the surface. The dream has faded, but its outline lingers like a faint pressure behind the eyes. Not vivid enough to name, not strong enough to stir him upright. Only a subtle awareness that sleep has carried him somewhere and back again. The embers shift inward as a small fragment of ash collapses. A faint red pulse brightens briefly, then dims. The warmth they give is gentle, reaching only so far before dissolving into the surrounding air. It does not command attention, it endures quietly. Further along the wall, two sleepers lie back to back, their breaths falling into a loose rhythm. One inhales deeply, the other follows a moment later. The cadence is imperfect but steady. In the shared enclosure, such patterns form without effort. His hand rests near his chest, fingers half curled. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they tighten and then release, as though grasping at something already gone. The motion is restrained, no more than a brief contraction beneath the blanket. His face remains still. The timber beams overhead respond faintly to the cold beyond the walls. A low, subtle contraction passes through them, not a crack, not a complaint, but a minute shift of fibers adjusting to the night. The sound blends with the soft rasp of breathing. A child stirs near the center of the room, turning onto her side. A whisper of fabric follows. An older woman's arm shifts instinctively, drawing closer without waking. The contact steadies both, and their breathing resumes in deeper measure. He drifts along the thin boundary between sleep and awareness. Sensation returns in fragments, the press of wool against his cheek, the mild stiffness in his shoulder, the faint dryness in his throat. He swallows once slowly, then settles again. The act is quiet enough not to draw notice. The darkness feels fuller now. The lamp's reach has narrowed further, leaving only a faint outline of the post beside it. Shadows gather densely near the roof, absorbing detail. The room seems smaller not from confinement, but from the depth of night pressing inward. Yet within that closeness there is no urgency. The Longhouse holds its shape steady and familiar. Bodies remain arranged along the walls in practiced order. No one speaks, no one rises. Another ember shifts, sending a thin thread of warmth upward before dissolving. He turns his head slightly toward the sound, though his eyes remain closed. The movement is subtle, guided more by habit than intent. Sleep resumes its slow claim. Thought withdraws once more into softness. The lingering trace of the dream recedes further, leaving only the quiet weight of the present moment, the shared air, the layered wool, the muted glow at the room's center. The Longhouse breathes on, contained within its own stillness. The night deepens not by darkening further, but by settling more completely into what it already is. Movements grow rarer now. What remains is subtle, the steady rise of chests beneath wool, the faint shifting of weight as bodies yield more fully to rest. He lies turned slightly inward, facing the wall, though his awareness has thinned again. The wood beside him holds the quiet memory of many winters. Its surface is cool near the floor, warmer higher where the day's faint heat once lingered. His knuckles rest against the blanket, just brushing the timber beyond. Further along the wall, a man exhales through parted lips, producing a soft, rhythmic sound that fades as quickly as it forms. It does not disturb the others. Within this shared enclosure, such small sounds are part of the night's fabric. They pass without judgment, absorbed into the whole. The oil in the lamp settles unevenly, causing the flame to lean and correct itself. For a moment, a narrow beam of light slides across a sleeping face, tracing the curve of a brow before withdrawing. Features return to shadow. No one stirs in response. He shifts again, slower this time, as if guided by something deeper than comfort. His arm slides forward beneath the blanket, palm resting lightly against the bedding near another's shoulder. The contact is brief, unintentional perhaps, yet grounding. Warmth travels through the layers without needing acknowledgement. Breathing within the room begins to align more closely, not in perfect unison, but in a shared steadiness. The air grows thicker with the warmth of many bodies. It carries the scent of wool, faint smoke, and skin long accustomed to labor. These traces mingle without sharpness. Near the hearth, ash settles inward once more. The faint glow pulses and contracts, leaving only a low red seam within gray. Its warmth is modest but reliable, holding the cold at a distance measured in handspans. Beyond that invisible boundary, the air cools. A sleeper near the center murmurs faintly, a fragment of speech shaped by dream rather than waking thought. The sound forms and dissolves before meaning can gather. No one answers. The Longhouse remains attentive without being alert. He breathes deeper now. His jaw slackens slightly. The tension that had lingered in his brow earlier has smoothed. Whatever dream carried him before has loosened its hold. Sleep is heavier, more complete. The straw beneath his bedding shifts minutely as he settles. It carries the faint rustle of dry stems pressed together, then quiets. The sensation beneath him becomes distant, as if the body itself is less aware of its own weight. Darkness occupies most of the room. The lamp's light is no longer enough to define edges clearly. Instead, it suggests presence, a hint of form where certainty once lay. Shapes are remembered rather than seen. The curve of a chest, the line of a folded cloak, the outline of a carved chest against the wall. Somewhere near the doorway, a faint draft sleeps along the floor. It brushes against the edge of a blanket and moves on unnoticed by those fully asleep. The timber does not protest. The structure holds firm against the outer cold. Within this shared stillness, no one is alone in their rest. Even in dreams, proximity remains. The closeness of others becomes part of sleep itself, a quiet reassurance carried without thought. He does not wake again. His breathing joins the deeper rhythm that now fills the space. Shoulders ease, fingers relax completely. The Longhouse, heavy with night, holds them all in a calm that requires no effort to maintain. The fire has settled into a low, patient glow. Its earlier brightness has softened, leaving only a bed of embers breathing faintly beneath a thin veil of ash. Light no longer reaches the far walls. It gathers close to the hearth and fades quickly into shadow. Within the Longhouse, movement has thinned to almost nothing. A shoulder shifts beneath wool. A hand withdraws slowly from the warmth. Someone exhales and turns, the straw beneath them whispering once before becoming still again. The night feels deeper now, not louder, not colder, only more complete. He lies awake, though his body has grown heavy. His breathing follows the rhythm of those around him, steady and unhurried. The air carries the scent of smoke and wool, of timber that has absorbed many winters before this one. Somewhere near the doorway, a beam contracts with a muted sound as the temperature lowers outside. The structure answers the cold quietly. Nothing in the Longhouse resists, it only adjusts. In this hour, when the fire no longer commands attention and the darkness holds most of the room, thoughts drift more freely. Dreams do not always wait for sleep. They gather at the edge of waking, subtle and unformed. Among these people, night has never been considered empty. What comes in dreams is not always dismissed as stray images of the mind. Sometimes it is listened to. Sometimes it is remembered in the morning and spoken of carefully, without certainty, but without mockery. He does not move, yet his awareness has shifted. Earlier, while others settled into rest, an old story had been mentioned, quietly, almost in passing, about a dream that once preceded a long journey and another that warned of loss before it arrived. No one had argued over its meaning. The telling itself had been enough. Now, in the dimness, that memory returns without urgency. His eyelids lower, not in full surrender to sleep, but in that narrow space where waking thought begins to loosen its grip. Shapes form and dissolve behind closed eyes. The embers pulse faintly, then dim again. Outside, the wind moves across the settlement in a long, low breath. It does not rattle the walls, but it reminds them of its presence. Snow shifts lightly along the roof's edge. The sound is soft, almost imagined. There is no immediate danger in the dark, no cry, no sudden disturbance, yet the darkness carries weight, not as threat, but as depth. It is a space in which the unseen is allowed to exist without explanation. He inhales slowly. If a dream comes, it may carry nothing more than fragments of the day, tools set aside, the glow of the hearth, the outline of familiar faces. Or it may bring something harder to name, a symbol, a place never walked, a voice that feels known without being heard before. Such things are not pursued, they are received. The fire gives a faint crack, then falls quiet again. A thin thread of smoke lifts and disappears into the upper shadow. Around him, the sleepers remain undisturbed. Their breathing weaves together into a shared rhythm, steady as the winter itself. He rests in that rhythm, aware that the night is not merely the absence of day, but a time when the world narrows and deepens at once. Thought slows, meaning drifts closer to the surface, though it may never fully emerge. The darkness holds its place, and within it, the boundary between waking and dream grows thinner, almost imperceptibly, as the embers continue their quiet, fading glow. Sleep comes to him in layers, not all at once. He does not fall into it as into a well. Instead, he drifts, hovering between the steady rhythm of the Longhouse and something less certain that gathers behind his closed eyes. The embers near the hearth pulse faintly, their glow barely touching the beams above. Most of the room belongs to shadow now. Breathing surrounds him, slow, even communal. It anchors him, yet his thoughts have begun to loosen from the weight of the room. At first, the images are small and familiar, the curve of a wooden bowl, the rough grain of a door beam beneath his palm, snow pressing against the outer wall. These are remnants of the day, harmless and close at hand, but they do not remain as they were. The bowl becomes deeper than it should be. The door beam stretches into a long corridor of timber that does not end. Snow falls upward instead of down, rising silently into a sky without color. None of it startles him. The strangeness carries its own calm. Among his people, such moments are not dismissed lightly. A dream is not always taken as a message, yet neither is it ignored. It is spoken of in the morning with care, wait without haste. Some dreams are considered the wandering of memory, others are watched more closely. He shifts slightly beneath the wool, though his body does not fully wake. In the half-formed landscape behind his eyes, he stands at the edge of water that does not freeze. The surface is dark and unbroken. There is no wind, yet he senses movement beneath it. He does not see what lies below. He only feels that something is present. The feeling is not fear in the sharp sense. It is quieter than that. A recognition that the world extends beyond what can be measured by hand or sight. The Longhouse remains still around him. A sleeper near the hearth exhales more deeply and then settles again. The fire makes no new sound. The darkness does not press closer, yet it seems more aware. In the dream he hears his name spoken once, not loudly, not urgently. The voice carries no command. It does not demand action. It simply exists, like a thread drawn lightly across the surface of thought. He does not answer. Stories told in winter often linger at the edge of sleep, tales of ancestors guided by visions, of warnings that arrived as symbols rather than words, of journeys seen in dreams before they were walked in waking life. These stories are not treated as certainty, they are treated as possibilities. The water before him ripples once, though nothing touches it. A faint unease passes through him, not dread, not panic, only the sense that something has been revealed and then withdrawn. The image begins to thin, the shoreline dissolves, the sky loses its depth, his breathing grows steadier again. Within the Longhouse, nothing has changed timber, wool, earth, the shared warmth of bodies resting close together. The night continues its slow, unbroken span. He remains between worlds for a moment longer. The voice does not return. The water is gone. In its place comes only darkness, soft and without shape, the kind that belongs to sleep rather than to vision. Among his people, such a dream would not be announced with alarm. It would be remembered quietly, perhaps mentioned while tending the morning fire. It might be considered a sign, or it might be set aside. For now, it belongs only to him. The boundary between waking and dreaming settles again into stillness. His body grows heavier. The faint tension that accompanied the vision eases without effort. The embers continue their slow decline, unseen by his closed eyes. And the night, holding both the known and the unnamed, stretches on without disturbance. The night has deepened into its most inward hour. Within the Longhouse, the air feels thicker, as though the darkness itself has settled closer to the floor. The embers no longer glow with steady light. They pulse faintly beneath their cover of ash, breathing in slow intervals that are almost too soft to notice. He does not wake fully from what has passed through him. The images have thinned, yet they have not vanished entirely. They linger at the edges of thought, less defined now, like footprints nearly filled with snow. He does not reach for them. He lets them rest where they have fallen. Among those who share this roof, dreams are sometimes spoken of as crossings. brief movements between what is seen and what is sensed. Not every crossing carries meaning, but neither is every vision dismissed. There is an understanding that the night allows certain things to surface, that daylight keeps quiet. A sleeper near him murmurs once, a low sound that fades before forming into words. It does not disturb the others. Breath resumes its even pattern. The shared rhythm remains unbroken. He turns slightly onto his side. The wool shifts against his cheek. The contact with the earth beneath the bedding grounds him again in the present. Timber beams overhead remain unmoving, solid, and familiar. Yet the feeling from the dream has left a trace, not of danger but of awareness. In the depth of winter, when daylight is brief and the hours of darkness long, the mind travels differently. Thoughts stretch further, memories blur into symbols. A shadow in the corner of the room may be nothing more than the angle of a beam, yet the body registers it before reason intervenes. He senses the far wall of the Longhouse without seeing it. The space beyond the doorway feels distant, though it lies only a few steps away. Outside, snow presses against the outer timbers. The wind moves slowly across the settlement, but does not rise. The dark is not empty. It carries the weight of all that cannot be easily named, ancestral stories, quiet warnings, hopes never spoken aloud. None of these take shape clearly now. They exist only as a subtle current beneath the surface of sleep. His breathing deepens. The unease that brushed him earlier does not sharpen. It settles instead into something steadier, a reminder rather than a threat. If the dream held meaning, it will reveal itself in time, or it will fade without consequence. There is no urgency to decide. A faint crack travels through the cooling wood near the roof. The sound is brief, almost delicate. No one stirs. He drifts again, not toward vivid images, but into a darker, heavier quiet. The kind of sleep where thought slows until it loses its edges. The water he once stood before is no longer visible. The voice that spoke his name has dissolved into silence. Only the sense of depth remains. In the long winter nights, such depth is familiar. It does not alarm. It is part of the season's rhythm, light withdrawing, sound thinning, the inner world widening. The embers dim further. Shadow now claims nearly all of the room. The small circle of warmth near the hearth shrinks to a suggestion rather than a presence. Beyond it, the Longhouse rests in a calm that feels almost suspended. He does not resist the quiet. Whatever crossed his mind earlier is allowed to settle into the same stillness that holds the others. There is no need to interpret, no need to guard against what has already passed. The night remains whole, and within it the boundary between belief and ordinary thought grows softer until both are absorbed into the slow, steady breathing of sleep. The night reaches its most settled depth. The embers at the hearth no longer pulse with visible light. They exist now as warmth more than glow, a quiet presence beneath ash. The Longhouse rests in near complete shadow, its shape defined more by memory than sight. He sleeps more heavily than before, yet not without awareness. The trace of his earlier dream has faded into something indistinct. It no longer forms images. It lingers only as a faint impression, like a word remembered but no longer understood. Around him, breath rises and falls in unison. There is comfort in this shared rhythm. It binds the sleepers together more securely than walls or timber. Even in darkness, they are not separate. Each inhale confirms the other's presence. Each exhale releases tension back into the room. Beyond the doorway, the settlement lies still beneath snow. No footstep breaks the surface. No animal calls out. The winter air holds its silence carefully, as though unwilling to disturb what rests within the walls. Yet even in such quiet, the night does not feel entirely empty. Among these people there is an understanding that darkness carries more than cold. It carries possibility of message, of memory, of subtle warning. Not every dream is spoken of. Some are kept within, allowed to settle before being weighed in daylight. He turns once, slowly, the movement instinctive rather than deliberate. The wool shifts. A hand brushes briefly against another's sleeve, then comes to rest again. No one wakes. The earlier sense of unease has thinned to almost nothing. It has not vanished, but it no longer presses at the edge of thought. It rests beneath the surface, quiet and patient. In another season, with longer light and open fields, such impressions might be dismissed quickly. But in winter, when darkness claims most of the hours, the mind learns to live alongside what it cannot fully see. The unseen is not chased away, it is acknowledged and then left undisturbed. A faint draft moves along the floor, cool against the edge of his blanket. He does not stir. The Longhouse absorbs the chill without complaint. Somewhere in the distance, far beyond the walls softened by snow, there is the slightest suggestion of movement. Not a sound clear enough to name, only a change in the texture of silence. It passes quickly, leaving no trace. The night remains unbroken. If the dream held meaning, it does not insist upon itself now. It has folded into sleep, becoming part of the same darkness that fills the rafters and gathers in the corners of the room. His breathing deepens further. The boundary between inner vision and outer shadow dissolves completely. There is no water, no voice, no image, only the steady presence of rest. Whatever lay beneath the surface of the dream recedes beyond reach. The Longhouse, held by timber and earth, endures the cold without sound. And in this hour, when belief and doubt alike are quiet, the darkness is simply what it is, vast, patient, and shared by all who lie within it. The hour before first light carries a different weight. It is not darker than the hours that came before, yet it feels closer to waking. Sleep thins at its edges. He does not rise, but his breathing shifts. The depth of it changes, less submerged, more aware. A faint stiffness gathers in his shoulder where it has rested too long against the same fold of wool. He draws a slow breath and adjusts slightly, easing the pressure without breaking the quiet around him. Across the room, another sleeper turns carefully onto his side. The movement is measured, almost deliberate, though still held within sleep. Straw compresses, then releases. The sound lingers briefly, then dissolves. The lamp has nearly given itself over. Its flame is small and subdued, casting only a dim halo at the base of the post. Most of the Longhouse lies in shadow, but the darkness no longer feels as dense. Something subtle has shifted. Not light yet, but the sense that night is no longer deepening. He opens his eyes. For a few breaths he remains still, allowing sight to adjust to the dimness. The shapes along the wall are familiar even without clarity. A knee beneath a blanket, the outline of a head turned toward the wall, a hand resting open against wool. He listens. The room holds no sudden sound, only breath, layered and soft. The faintest crackle from the hearth as ash settles inward. The steady presence of timber unmoving. He thinks of the dream, though not fully. Only fragments rise. The horizon, the carved wood, the quiet assembly of figures. They do not press upon him. They wait at the edge of recall. For many, dreams of this kind would not be spoken immediately upon waking. They would be held quietly through the first tasks of morning, weighed against the shape of the coming day. Meaning was not seized, it was considered. He closes his eyes again, not to return fully to sleep, but to rest within the stillness. The cold beyond the walls remains contained, held back by timber and shared warmth. The air near the floor is cooler now, brushing faintly against exposed skin. A child shifts near the center of the room, rolling onto her back. The movement is slow, untroubled. An older hand adjusts a blanket in response, then rests again. He feels the faint ache in his hands, a residue of work carried through the day before. It is not sharp, only present. Winter demands repetition, and repetition leaves its mark. Another breath passes. The quiet stretches, thin but unbroken. He opens his eyes once more. The darkness seems softer now, as if its edges have begun to loosen. The lamp flickers and, with a final small lean, steadies again. It will not last much longer. He does not rise yet. There is no urgency. The Longhouse remains within its shared enclosure of night, though the deep hours have passed. He lies still among the others, neither fully asleep nor fully awake, held in the narrow space between. The dream lingers faintly beneath his thoughts, not troubling, not commanding, only present. He lets his breath slow again, allowing the last stretch of night to rest upon him without resistance. The stillness grows lighter, though no clear light has yet entered the room. It is felt first in the air, a subtle change, as if the darkness itself has loosened its hold. He lies on his side, eyes half open now, watching the faint outline of the post where the lamp has nearly burned down. The flame trembles once, then lowers, its light reduced to a small patient glow. Around him, shapes begin to separate from one another, no longer merging completely into shadow. Breathing continues in soft cadence along the walls. A sleeper near the hearth turns slowly, drawing a knee upward before settling again. The movement carries no urgency. The night has thinned enough that even small motions feel less enclosed. He draws a careful breath, feeling the cooler air at his nose and the lingering warmth beneath the blankets. The two meet somewhere along his skin, a quiet balance between what the Longhouse holds and what waits beyond it. The dream rests in him still, though its edges have blurred. He cannot see the figures clearly now, nor the shoreline. Only the sense of standing before something held just beyond reach remains. It does not trouble him. It does not demand action. It simply lingers, like the faint warmth left in wood long after flame has dimmed. From near the doorway comes a soft scrape, not of wind, but of someone shifting their foot against the floor in sleep. The sound is brief. It fades quickly into the shared breath of the room. He lets his hand rest lightly against the blanket near another shoulder. The contact is steady and unremarkable, yet grounding. In the fading hours of night, such closeness carries its own quiet reassurance. The embers at the hearth are nearly ash now, their glow barely visible beneath gray. The air cools slightly as their warmth withdraws. No one rises to tend them yet. The last stretch of night remains intact. He closes his eyes once more, not in deep sleep, but in a soft suspension. Thoughts do not gather. The dream does not return. There is only the sense of waiting, not for anything defined, but for the gradual turning of dark toward light. Around him, the Longhouse rests in shared quiet. The walls stand firm. The roof beams hold steady against the outer cold. Within, bodies remain close, breath layered upon breath. The night does not end abruptly. It thins, and within that thinning, he remains still. A faint paling begins where roof meets wall, not yet light, only a loosening of dark. The change is gradual enough that no one stirs for it. The Longhouse remains enclosed in its shared quiet, breath layered softly along the timber. He lies with eyes closed, not asleep as before, yet not fully awake. His breathing is slow and even. The stiffness in his shoulder has eased. The wool beneath his cheek holds a trace of warmth gathered through the night, now thinning as the embers finally surrender to ash. The lamp gives a final subdued flicker. Its small flame leans once and fades, leaving behind a thin ribbon of smoke that curls upward and disappears into shadow. No one rises to tend it. The room accepts the dimness without protest. Without the lamp's glow, shapes settle into a softer outline. Edges blur, yet they no longer feel heavy. The darkness is lighter now, touched by the suggestion of morning beyond the walls. It does not rush inward. It waits at the threshold. A sleeper near the hearth shifts, drawing breath more deeply before releasing it in a long exhale. Another rolls slightly onto a different side, the movement slow and unhurried. Straw rustles faintly and then is still. He opens his eyes once more. The interior has changed, though almost imperceptibly. The beams overhead are no longer swallowed entirely. Their lines are faintly visible against the dim ceiling. The air feels cooler along his brow, yet no colder than it has been through the night. He does not move at once. His hand remains resting lightly near another's shoulder, fingers relaxed. The contact carries no urgency, only quiet reassurance. In the thinning dark, the presence of others is clearer than before. The dream has receded further now. What remains is not image, but impression, a sense of having stood before something held just beyond reach. It rests gently within him, neither demanding speech nor action. It may be remembered later, it may not. A subtle gray light begins to trace along the upper edges of the wall, entering through unseen gaps near the roof vent. It spreads slowly, without brightness, revealing the grain of wood in muted tones. The packed earth floor remains in shadow, but no longer in complete obscurity. Breath continues in steady rhythm around him. No voices rise, no tasks begin. The settlement beyond the walls has not yet stirred. Even the animals outside remain quiet in their enclosures. He draws a longer breath and lets it pass without sound. The air entering his lungs feels clearer, touched faintly by the approach of day. His body remains heavy beneath the blankets, but the weight is comfortable. Another small movement travels along the wall, a hand withdrawing beneath wool, a knee easing outward. The room does not wake all at once, it hovers in a shared pause between night and morning. The embers are now dull and gray, their warmth nearly gone. A thin curl of ash shifts inward, settling without glow. The hearth rests in silence. He turns his head slightly toward the center of the room. The shapes of those near him are clearer now, the curve of a back beneath blanket, the outline of hair against wool. No one speaks. The closeness that carried them through the dark remains unchanged in the dimness of early light. Outside, though unseen, the sky has begun its slow transition. Within the Longhouse, that change arrives gently, without announcement. The darkness withdraws by degrees, revealing what was already there. He closes his eyes again, not to sleep deeply, but to rest in this last stretch of quiet before movement begins. His breathing slows once more, matching the steady cadence of those around him. The Longhouse holds its calm. The night has thinned, but it has not been broken. It yields softly as winter mornings do, without spectacle or sound. And if one chooses to remain here a while longer, listening to the quiet breath of timber and wool and those who rest within it, the stillness will remain.